Andrew and Chris disappeared. Over the next 5-6 days, I was in and out of Soledar I was the last person in my battalion out of Soledar. What took them 4 months to advance 4 kilometers, they took 5 kilometers between the 7th of January and the 13th of January. The last time I left that town was the closest gunfight I've ever seen. But later on, it was determined that, at least with Andrew, it was a big thing in the news. I kept my mouth shut about it, but people talk. People like to be in the news, like to say that, oh, that was my best friend, whether they knew them or not. When the news cycle was over, the bodies were sold back by Wagner. Don't ask me the details, but we got their bodies back. Wagner will sell you. Oh, they'll sell you your son's body. Don't ask me how it's done, how we do prisoner exchanges. Andrew was shot in the back of the head by a 5.45. So whatever happened to them, maybe he died on his knees, from the top out the front. I never did civilian work ever again after that.
So, welcome to a new episode of Scherpschutters. First time in English for me, and that's for a special reason, because today is my guest, Brandon Mitchell. Very happy to have you here in my studio.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. It's a real pleasure to be here in the Netherlands, and I'm very grateful that you have me here today. Thank you.
So you have a really big following, so a lot of people are following you, because yesterday I posted that you're coming here, and I got a lot of messages from people who've been following you since the beginning of the war. But in your own words, can you tell me who you are and what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, I'm going to say what I want to say. I do my job, but I film a lot of weird things in Donbas, and I upload those on Instagram and YouTube, and it pretty much gets us the funding for what we need to buy for supplies, mostly Army medical, and more often now focusing on offensive capabilities. I'm a medic.
Yeah, so you're a volunteer in the Ukraine-Russian war at this moment, and you're on a short leave. That's why you can be here in the studio. You just got out of the front of the war. So we're going to talk about that, of course, because I want to know who are you and how you end up in the war there, and what you're doing, who you meet there, and what's happening on the ground, because it's very valuable for me and for the listeners to know what's really happening, because sometimes it's difficult to understand what's really happening for the people just following the mainstream news and to get a real picture. So I'm really grateful that you are willing to tell your story here. And I hope also to know and to tell the people how we can help you as well in your mission.
You.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I can only tell you about what I know. And in the big picture, I don't know about that. But I know roads really well. I know evac routes pretty good. So we can talk about whatever you want. And if I know about it, I'll share.
Yeah, because you're a medic, but you're also a good driver, right?
I've only blown up one so far.
Yeah, you can see that on your Instagram as well. So we're going to talk about that a bit later. But first, my first question is always the same, basically, and that's, who are you? And you already answered your name, but I would like to know where you come from, and how you grew up, and how did you end up in the army? Because you've been in the army before, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Canada, a small town called Miramichi, New Brunswick. Not too many people have ever heard of it before. And I didn't have a mother when I grew up. She died when I was young. I lived with my grandparents. When I was a kid, I lived on my grandparents' street. There was no kids there because they were all my father's age. But I don't know. I learned to have an imagination, I learned to make my own fun. But I was always a kind of a loner in school. I did have a big fascination with the army. We have a fantastic program in Canada, cadets. Army cadets, Sea cadets, Air cadets, and my local town had a Air cadet program, and you would go and you would drill for 3 hours a week. If you were really keen, you could train on the weekend, join the band, join the drill team, go to summer camps. So I had a big interest in this. My mother's side, my grandfather served in the Royal Canadian Air Force during the Cold War in Germany. I loved watching all those black and white documentaries. You know, that's some of the stuff I grew up with. Yeah, I got into a lot of trouble in school. Probably after I hit puberty, I became a little asshole. Yeah, I drank too young. I smoked weed when probably kids shouldn't be doing that. What I did do, I wanted to join the Army Reserve. At 16 years old in Canada, you can become an Army Reserve soldier, and I remember I was 15 years old when September 11th happened. I remember I was in the school cafeteria, and that's kind of important for me because I think over the next few years, you know, I come from a small town, maybe 15,000 people. I think no less than 30 boys would have either joined the reserves or joined the army within the next couple of years of 9/11. When I was old enough at 16, I joined the Army Reserve. That got me out of a lot of trouble. That probably saved my life because I was a little shit. I'd actually quit school. You have to go till you're 18 in Canada. There was an opportunity for me. You know, I was troublesome, but I was, I guess, what you would call a field soldier. Yeah, I didn't much like rules for the sake of rules, but I loved my friends and I loved being part of the group. I don't think the sergeant majors liked me. I was a cocky little shit, but all the corporals and privates loved. I hope they loved me. Yeah, I had a chance to join the army, and this was a big thing for me. Sergeant Friesen, I remember now. It's funny now because I don't consider myself an adult when I'm 20 years old, 18 years old. He's like God to me, and he was like 38, you know. He gave me a chance, he said, because he knew what I was doing outside of the reserves. I quit school. I was selling drugs. I was selling weed. He said to me, you know, sometimes you come here drinking, you're not going to last. You're going to go to jail. You're going to die. It says, if I can get you a contract in the army, you go away. I think you should take that. And yeah, he was a big role model of mine. I served 2 years, a full-time contract as not a regular soldier, but a full-time reservist in Canada's biggest base. I worked in a support role in an infantry school, and I was too young to see all the things around me, but only as an adult I realized what I was exposed to. In Canada, everybody from sergeant and above to lieutenant colonel, in fact, has to come through there for career courses. There's the infantry school. Right next door there's the armored school, the artillery school. And every 2-3 months I was getting put around on different courses, comms courses, sniper courses, platoon commander courses. And I was getting a little bit of everything, but I had the energy of a Springer Spaniel, if you know what dogs are like. I got in trouble. If you leave me, if you don't work me to death, yeah, I had a chance to join the British Army. We were doing an exchange program. We had a sniper concentration. People come from all over the world. And the Black Watch is a very famous regiment. And there was a captain there. But he wasn't British. He was from South Africa. And I was like, how can you join the British Army? He says, well, you're from Canada. You can too. It's a Commonwealth country. And that just blew my mind. Is that you mean I can go to... I read all those books. I don't know if you read them over here, like Andy McNabb.
Yeah.
I adored...
Bravo 20 got me in
Bravo
as well.
20. Yeah. I think half of it was full of shit now, looking back, but half of it was true. Yeah, I got out. I finished my contract. I went and I joined the British Army, and I joined the Black Watch. And if I can be completely honest with you, have you ever heard of imposter syndrome? You know, where people find success, but they can't handle it?
Yeah, you constantly have the feeling you are failing, or somebody's going to see you cannot do anything.
Like I'm a fake.
Yeah.
And I was doing very well. I went home one Christmas and I had a massive party with drink and drugs. And when I came back to the army, I got into a lot of trouble. And despite them throwing everybody out of the army for drink and drug problems, they wanted to keep me. See, that was my whole life growing up with no mum. You know, aunties and uncles gave me more attention. School teachers, I didn't get enough. I didn't get punished like other kids. And even in an entire another country, I don't know how this works, from sergeant majors to even the battalion deputy commander stay in the army. I quit the army and I went wild. Fast forward many years, I went to Ukraine, but.
Okay, the thing I'm curious about is, how's the relationship with your father?
Not good. We've talked once on the phone since I went to Ukraine, but we would go years without talking. He had another child when I was in the army. He'd been in and out of my life. Growing up, I wanted him to be my dad, but he was too busy. I know he's a good father. I don't really have a relationship with him or my half brother, but I know he's a good father to him. And for what that's worth, you want to know, I'm happy that he's a good father second time round. But I could try to force it, but there's nothing there. There's nothing there, Mark.
But there wasn't also, when you were growing up, you missed, you didn't have your mother, and you felt like your father was there, but he wasn't there really for you.
My father was in organized crime. Yeah, that's the truth. If you really want to know the truth, he would come visit in the summer, Christmas. He lived in Toronto, and we lived in a small town. He moved back to our small town when I was about 12 years old, when my grandmother died. I wanted him to be my father, but he was a very popular man in our town and very popular with the ladies as well. So his attention was in demand. That hurt a lot growing up as a kid. That hurt a lot. That's a big reason I left my hometown to join the army, to go further, because everybody always told me about how great my father was, but who was this man they spoke of? That's the truth.
So if you look at that and the role of the army, what was it like? Do you think it felt like you were searching for a family when you joined the army, and did you find it?
I've got two friends from the army. I got a lot of good buddies still. You know, people, especially since I've gone to Ukraine, people have reached out to me and emotionally, like, they care for me, they wish me well. But I've got two amazing friends from the army to this day. I just wanted to find my place. I wanted to be needed. That's what I wanted. More than family, more than anything, I wanted to be needed. I think a lot of boys join the army for that.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
It's always the same story, man. All the people who've been sitting here in this chair, in this podcast, I mean, it's usually the same story.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, you want to feel like you're worth something, and you can help other people, and being seen. And because you probably missed that basic attention, you should have get in a healthy family, and then you go search for it somewhere else. And it's logical. So it's a hard battle, but for you, yeah.
Many different paths.
Yeah.
Maybe if I had so many medals on my chest, then all of a sudden I would be okay. Do you know?
Yeah.
That was never meant to be for me. But I punished myself for many years. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I fell into a big depression after that wild drug binge in my hometown, and they let me out on my paperwork says conduct of service exemplary. That's a very good discharge. Why they give me those things, I don't know. I could have gone back to the army later on. I thought about it many times in life. It took many years to forgive myself, but I wasn't a man. I was a scared little boy. Even still, some days I can be a scared little boy, but I know what that's about now. Yeah.
So how old were you then?
I was 21. I didn't want to go back to Canada because I felt ashamed, because I told everybody, I'm going to the British Army, I'm going to do this. Nobody cared. Everybody's got their own life. They've got their own kids, their own problems. I went to London, and I wasn't done partying yet. I found a job in the events industry, which was fantastic. There was a lot of cash back then, and to go there to work at events from, like motorcycle shows, car shows, home improvement, agriculture, and there was a real good community in this. People who were traveling every week. They work their weekends. Some of them have families. They make a living out of this. Some people will go wild, and that's exactly what I did for years. I was hooked on London. All these people from all around the world. There was Dutch people as well, people from South Africa, people from Australia, America. I was like, you can do this work anywhere? He's like, yeah, I come to the London Ideal Home Show every year. Matt, he was Matt the Marine. He was in Mogadishu, actually. But now he's a demonstrator selling irons, and women. Look at this handsome American here demonstrating to these British women, you should buy this iron for your house.
Yeah.
I used that work for years to get all around the world. I've been to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, America. I had a lot of party. It's probably worth mentioning. It's very worth mentioning. When I was 26 years old, I had, I'll just call it a mental breakdown. I got myself into, do you know what a 12-step program is? Recovery.
Rehab.
And I didn't go to rehab. Those meetings where people go to churches and sit around in the corners? I never mentioned the name of the program. There's different 12-step programs, but we have what's called an anonymity. And now that I'm a little bit popular, I don't mention the program, but it's a 12-step program. It's been it's almost 11 and a half years I've not had a drink or a drug.
So what is the difference between what you found going to the military that didn't work, that is different to this 12 program that did work? Was it the fact that you already had enough party under your belt, or was it something different?
I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live the way I was living. I had this is the truth. Except for one relationship, I've met some fantastic women my whole life. Wonderful women, educated nurses, teachers. It was always me that broke it off with them. I could have had a nice life with a wife, children. I had a girlfriend in Australia, and I couldn't keep it together. And when that fell apart, when the money, I made very good money doing this work. When the money was gone, when all the things that I wanted you to think I am, that I wanted to believe I was, when that was gone, there had to be another way. Do you understand? When I went into those rooms, that was in Australia, in Melbourne, Australia. I swallowed a bottle of pills one night. I didn't know that they wouldn't kill me. I didn't do my homework on this, but I was a very sad man, and what happened. But the funny thing about that, it was quite inconvenient. I woke up the next day, but I knew about these rooms. My father had been 10 years sober through a 12-step program at one time when I was younger. Maybe I could try that. And the biggest difference at 26 years old, some people think of addiction as banging heroin in an alley, and I couldn't keep my life together. I just, no matter what. So if I didn't have the answer, maybe someone else did. That was the difference. Maybe someone else, maybe these people. And I was scared enough. I gave it a chance. If they said come back to another meeting, I came back. I seen people would come and go from the meetings, go outside for a cigarette, and those people didn't have what I wanted. Those were the people who were still on the social welfare system, no disrespect. They were the people not making progress, but the people who stayed were the people who had better relations with their family. Maybe they went to university again, like they had studies, they quit school like me, they took steps in their life. So I just seen what was there, and I thought, I'll try someone else's way. Yes, for 11 and a half years now, and I got to be careful because I didn't intend. I have quite a powerful platform for what I do right now. I don't know what's best. I don't assume that I know what's best. That's guided me through everything.
It's always a puzzle, right? And it's your puzzle, and everybody needs to solve their own puzzle. So what works for you is never definitely the same path for somebody else. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Like, for example, I want to do something one way. You want to do it another way. If I don't have a reason why we're doing it that way, then maybe I just do that because that's a habit. Maybe you know something better. I'd like to hear that. I struggle with my own ego sometimes over that, but 9 times out of 10, I do listen to others for whatever that's worth. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. So since that program you kept yourself off the drugs?
No, I've not touched a drug. I've not touched a drink, except for being in hospital. I've had a bit of an accident in Ukraine. I was on some very powerful painkillers.
All right.
But I just knew that it would be infinitely worse, because that's what happened in those rooms. The people who got clean and got better lives, when they relapsed on a drug again, and I've been through some very painful times without drink or drugs. I went through a period, I used to try to rescue women, usually with daddy issues. I had some pretty messy girlfriends. I was a messed up person. I had to deal with a lot of pain in life. We don't need to go into that, but I knew that if I were to do that again, I seen all the people who relapsed on drugs. It wasn't the same as it was before. It got worse. And every time they got clean, I've seen people in there over the years, they've been there 20 years. Every time they went back out, it got worse and they hit a new bottom. Because it's like they were getting high, but they had knowledge that there was something better. And they all talked about a pain inside. They didn't, the first time around, I didn't know, everything that happened in the army, I forgive my soul that, that I couldn't be that. I didn't know, but now I know. So I can go out the door tomorrow and die from drug addiction, but I could never say I didn't know. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. I went on and had a life.
Yeah.
I went on and had a life. I got a bit of education.
But how is it to go through hard times without
drink or drugs?
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot of other things in the modern world these days. Food has always been an issue for me. Tinder was a thing for a while. Swipe right, swipe left.
Right.
And then there's some other things I've looked at on my phone before, but I don't really want to talk about those right now. Use your imagination.
But,
we can use anything.
Do you think the excitement that goes along with an area like Ukraine is also part of that?
Yes, it is. I didn't think we'd talk much about the 12-step program and how it guides me. In our 12th step, having had...
Can you just pull your thing a little bit down?
Pull it down a bit?
A little bit, yeah.
Just
Thanks.
like this?
Yeah, great.
Our 12th step in all recovery programs, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry the message to others and practice these principles in all of our affairs. Okay? So from what I've learned, I try to live a better life. I don't tell anyone what to do. that we don't tell people. I just live my best life, and I try to help others. In a 12-step program, we help new addicts. We help other people who are struggling. Being concerned for other people's welfare, we are not obsessed with ourselves. Oh, I don't have enough money. Oh, I'm too fat. Oh, I'm not as smart as the other person in the room. Oh, I don't look like that other guy in the gym. What am I doing looking at other men's bodies? No, I'm just being really honest, I don't like to compare to others, but I try to live my best. And if I can help somebody because they ask for it or they need it, not because I need to help. Do you understand the difference?
Yeah, right.
People say that all the time to me. If you ever want someone to talk to, strangers on the internet, no, you want to talk. That's okay. That's what I do. And is Donbas a drug for me? You're damn right it is. But I've thought long and hard of this. 80% of the time, it's me working my 12th step. And I'm not perfect. 20% of the time, it's me still trying to fill the hole inside him. That hole will never be full. But why worry about it? Because we're doing good things. Who cares why you do good things? But yeah, sometimes I'm filling that hole, that drug. It's not a drug. It could be a person. It could be. God, I used to run half marathons and things like that, and I wouldn't give myself rest time, and as a result, my joints are a little bit. That can be a drug too,
Yeah, I don't have any judgment about it. I'm just really curious about how it works. And I also would like to, because your story is really inspiring, because I think a lot of people are trying to fill the same hole you're talking about with sort of doing good stuff. But usually it's like telling themselves the stories. They just want to fill their own stuff, But you're going there. And you're helping people, and you're going to the Ukraine to do the work you're doing. So I have a big admiration for the people who do that, who step out and know themselves good enough to know your shortcomings. You know where you're coming from. You know what you did, but you're still there and doing the work. So I can only express my admiration and my
thank you,
my gratefulness for that. Yeah. So let's move forward to because you've been living in Sweden, and there's one point. Can you tell us a story about how you ended up from Sweden into the Ukraine?
Yeah, I wasn't prepared for Corona. I lost my business. I lost everything. February, there was a massive robbery that happened in the events industry. A lot of businesses were affected. March came Corona, killed my cash flow. All of a sudden I moved to Sweden, and I had a girlfriend there doing a long distance. First time in my life, I got to get a job. The army wasn't a job. Doing events wasn't a job. I loved it. All of a sudden I got to pack boxes for a living for an online company. I had to learn a new type of humility. Didn't have a car, didn't know anybody. All of a sudden I got to take public transport, and I don't speak the language. And they all speak English, but that won't help you in Sweden. Not if you want to get ahead. I had to learn a whole new way of doing things. And that was the biggest asset, 2 years in Sweden before the war. I worked hard. I studied the language. I worked to make friends. I improved my fitness to no end because I knew that would be an asset. And I also did service in the 12-step rooms. And that's one of the biggest assets, how I learned to speak Swedish. I went to the Swedish meetings. I shut up and I listen.
Is it a worldwide thing?
All over the world.
Yeah, right.
All over the world. I've been to a couple meetings in Ukraine, Russian-speaking meetings.
Oh, wow.
I can do online ones, especially during Corona. I eventually passed a Swedish job interview, but through those meetings, through my dog, Masa, Stockholm's a cold city. You Dutch are pretty friendly, I got to be honest, but people don't talk to strangers in Stockholm. How can you learn to speak Swedish? But through my dog, through my studies, through the rooms, people started talking to me in Swedish about my dog I passed a Swedish job interview. I learned a trade, a stone worker. I'm quite proud of that. I have little hands the size of a little girl. It's true. It's true though. It's true. I never had an athletic advantage in my whole life, but everything I come up against was stronger than me. Do you understand? Yeah, I had a good life in Sweden, but it wasn't quite right. When the war happened, I'll be honest, I got troubles at home. Mr. Zelensky asked for volunteers on day 3 of the war. And this is really, really weird. I'm just going to explain it to you the way I understand it. And you're going to have to... Something happened in my body. I had a physiological change. I became obsessed with Ukraine. I had to go help. Every morning I'm going to the gym. I can do 30 pull-ups. That's not bad. But all of a sudden, within 2 days, I can do 45. Just like that. I don't need sleep. I'm sleeping 4 hours a night. How do I get to Ukraine? How do I get to Ukraine? I didn't tell anybody because it's a very serious thing. A lot of people are talking, oh, we have to stand with Ukraine. But I wanted to be taken serious. I plotted. And then eventually, I told my auntie Jennifer, who's like my mom. I told my girlfriend. And I eventually told my employer. That's a big reason why I went. I worked for an Estonian company. They had contracts with IKEA all over the place. I built the display kitchens in IKEA and other places. But you know, Estonia borders Russia. I got a lot of friends from Estonia. And a big part of their foreign policy and even their domestic policy is based around Russia. I seen a bigger war. I worried about... I had Polish friends as well. Where would Russia go next? I didn't have any kids. Do you understand? I felt a moral compulsion to go to Ukraine and I didn't know what I would do. So I went. I found a group of Swedes through an app called Signal. I didn't know what that was at the time. What the hell is Signal? Oh, it's like WhatsApp, but better. We met on the 14th of March in Krakow. We crossed the border on the 16th of March. Yeah, I went to Ukraine.
So how was it for you to say goodbye from the people you know there? And did you sort of prepare that? And can you remember the moment you left? Was that significant for you?
Yeah. I worked really hard to progress in Sweden, to have a good life for me, my partner, to be a man, you know, a real man. And but I had to go. And it was going to be very messy between the two of us. But I was going to miss my dog more than anything, if I'm going to be honest with you. My dog. And all that stuff on the news, there was nothing but Ukraine. It took Corona out of the news. It had to be something big. I thought we were all going to die. But if I didn't go, I knew if I was going to be an old man, I might be a little bit bitter inside. Because, you know, you could have helped, you know. You never know what you could have done unless you went. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I felt, come and see. Mentally, I was scared. But when I told my auntie, after 5 days of planning in secret, I wasn't scared anymore. She's like my mom. I told her, I said, this is what I'm going to do. I love you. I want to let you know. I want you to be proud of me, everything I've done, and I know how much shit I gave you as a kid, and but I've done good, and whatever happens, I just want you to be proud of me, and this is what I'm going to do. So, if you're scared, but please be proud of me because I'm doing what's right. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't scared of death. There was only one fear I had, and I didn't want to let people down. That I wanted to help. I did not want to let people down. So I went to Ukraine and I wasn't scared anymore. Not for me. Yeah.
So what was the atmosphere? You were at 5 guys, right?
5 guys from Sweden.
How was the atmosphere going there?
Well, right away, I felt I didn't stack up. Before I left, I got a picture with my dog, and I said to myself, whatever I do in Ukraine, I will not lie. You know, if I end up with the army, humanitarian, whatever happens, if somebody asks, do you know how to do this? Yes or no, you know? As soon as I'm walking out of the building, my neighbor sees me. She's like, where are you going? It's like, I'm going to Ukraine. She's like, have you been to war before? And I said, yes. Impulsively, I lied to her because I didn't want the awkwardness. I didn't want to look like a fool, you know? I was embarrassed to say, no, I'd never been to war before and I'm going to World War III. And I told a lie. Do you understand? And I thought about that on the train to the airport, the flight to Krakow. I mustn't do that. I have to tell the truth. And those Swedish boys, Swedish Marines, Swedish Rangers, 3 of them had been to Afghanistan, 1 had not. What did I have to offer? But I told the truth. I said, yeah, I was in the army years ago. I've not been in the army for years. I haven't even fired a rifle in 10 years. I want to come and help. And we started organizing. But what I was good at was making phone calls, finding things. I had a contact in Lviv. They didn't. An old Canadian guy. That's a big thing, you know? Oh, we're going to cross the border. What's that going to be like? We got to Lviv and we went to a place like a safe house, if you will. This old Canadian man got a place where like foreign fighters could come and live in this basement and find their way to the Foreign Legion, the Georgian Legion, to all these things were happening. And this was March 16th, so nobody really knew. All we knew that Kiev was under attack, and that's where the shit was happening. They got a chance to join Hospitallers Medical Battalion. What's that? And said, oh, well, we met this guy on Instagram. I didn't have social media. He says we can go to Kiev and join a combat medical battalion. 2 of them were combat medics. One of them, actually in civilian life after the army, became a nurse. And the other guy was just a badass with yeah, Nico was the coolest of all. They're like, do you want to join? I can't. What can I do there, you know? They said, if you want to come, you can come. And I said, yeah, all right, I'm coming. You know, you guys are good guys. These guys here in Kiev or in Lviv are full of shit. You know, all these super special forces guys that did this and that. But even I know they're full of shit. I'm coming with you guys, you know, safety in numbers.
How did you sort of differentiate between the guys? You sort of felt like, well, I'm going with them. A lot of guys are talking, but they're sort of full of shit. How did you differentiate between that?
It didn't make sense. And there's an American TV show, Judge Judy.
Oh, yeah.
It's horrible TV, but Judge Judy always says, if it doesn't make sense, it's because it's not true. So what was this guy from America doing here? And he has 5 kids and under the age of 15. Well, I'm crazy for coming here, but he's got kids at home. He's not right in the head. I'll stay away from him. Okay, that was one example. Or guys saying, yeah, we went to join the Georgian Legion, but they only gave us 1 magazine for our rifles. And I'm like, well, maybe, but I don't think that's true. You know, like that, why would anybody do that? They're not going to send you like a suicide squad. There's the Russians run. The Ukrainians surely aren't that stupid. Or there was guys that they'd been to Kiev and it was all happening in Kiev, but they couldn't tell details. Like it didn't make sense. I felt the Swedish boys, I knew what their intentions were. They wanted to come and help and I wanted to help, but I knew they had professional competency because the way they talked. There was no bravado about them, like which is certainly in English-speaking armies. There's like I don't want to go too much into that, but a lot of people think too highly of themselves.
Yeah.
I wanted to be with them. We got to Kiev, and we had a contact, Oleg, and they don't want to know in Ukraine nowhere. And I've seen this a million times, particularly with Americans, because they have such a big army. They don't want to know if you're an E5 or if you were in 5th Group Special Forces they don't know what that means. They're like, what are you? I'm a medic. What are you? Paramedic. What are you? A driver. I wanted to be a driver because I'd driven big vans like Sprinters in the events industry. I figure I'll be an ambulance driver. That's something I can do really good. I can drive really good. And that's a valuable thing in war. Oleg says, we don't need drivers. But if you want to be a gunner, we have some gunner positions available, two new gunner positions. And if you want to join, that's what you must do.
So it's time to be honest then, right?
Yeah, and I said...
it's been a while.
I said, yeah, well, I haven't fired a rifle in years. And he said, do you want to do it or not? And I was like, okay. And right then, Nico, the coolest guy with us, he was like, oh, you're going to be a gunner, bro? Cool, I'm a gunner. I was like, great. We're outside this famous church in Kiev. That was where our base was, and you can hear bombs. I didn't know distance with shells back then. Maybe it was 2 kilometers, 5. It was probably like 10 kilometers away, but all these bombs going off. It's like, I'm going to be a gunner. But I wanted to help, right? So that was a choice I had to make. I signed up and joined Hospitallers Medical Battalion. That was a crazy time.
So what's happening when you say you signed up? Like, do you actually sign up? Do they want to know anything about you? Do you really become part of the battalion? How does it work technically?
Well, it's really weird. You know the saying, hurry up and wait?
Yeah, that's war.
Well, even in World War III, you've got that. Yeah. We were in this church and there was soldiers coming and going. We mostly spent our time in the basement. Okay, there was a kitchen in there. There was training going on for all the Ukrainians, medical training. Okay, there was different units of which I learned later, the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, which we're a part of, which is numbers in its thousands. They were training with rifles. They were training with a lot of things. But the foreigners, they weren't doing much. Maybe there was 20 of us, 30 of us. The Swedish boys were put to work really, really quick. Basically, what would happen, it wasn't a command structure where a commander would say, you will be on this team, you will be on that team. They were talking to Ukrainians. What can you do? What is your skills? I've this. Okay, do you want to join my team? People were making their own teams. We would have ambulance. Some of them were ambulance. Some of them were Sprinter transit vans that were converted with a welder to make an ambulance. And they were spray painting them green as fast as they could. It always seemed like I was on that base for about probably 12 days before I got made onto a team. They would come. Now we have a new vehicle. We need 4 people for an ambulance crew. Those Swedish boys were gone. They were going to Bucha, Irpin, gone for 3 days, 5 days. They'd come back, have to clean the ambulance, restock. I'm like, what's it like? What's it like? And they would tell me. But it gave me a confidence because they were coming back alive. You understand? Some of our ambulances would come back with holes in them, but everybody was living. I wasn't getting made onto a team, but all the training was only in Ukrainian. There was a nurse from Colorado, no military experience. Her sister was in the Navy. I've come to know her quite well. She started an English language syllabus for tactical medicine training. I did about a 9 or 10 day course with her and a French doctor. They created the syllabus, the training, and for about, no less than 10 hours a day, but I think as much as 14 hours a day, I was learning tactical medicine, from tourniquet application, hemostatic gauze to assist with bleeding. It was even on my second or third day, I did my first IV, intravenous injection to run a catheter. That was a big mental block. Do you understand? To pierce someone's vein. I didn't know how to do that stuff, but they're like, "Do you want to learn?" It was the same as hospitallers. Do you want to be a gunner or not? Do you want to learn? We did that training day in and day out, but back to the foreigners. Some were getting made on teams, and some were getting a tap on the shoulder by some of the Ukrainian commanders. I'm sorry, we have no place for you. There were liars. You understand? I remember a boy from South Africa, and there was actually a Dutchman who I didn't much like at the time. Very arrogant. He's now my friend, but I didn't like him. I like Dutch people, but I find you to be very direct and very, very, very confident. But it turned out he actually was the real deal. But this South African boy that was around him, he was 19 years old. He was quite fat. I don't mean to make fun of fat people, but for all the military qualifications he was boasting, he couldn't be that fat at 19 years old. He was telling stories. He would disappear from the base, and he was saying, "Yes, we were instructing the Ukrainians today on how to work javelins." You don't know it. I know he's full of shit. He was the first one to get kicked out. But I was very conscious of all these things that were happening around me. Like, why would somebody come to Ukraine to this and help? And why would he lie? You know, like people could die, or he's just wasting their time. I waited, and then I got asked to join a team.
Before we go into that, what is your conclusion about, because I sense about you that you observe and you analyze also about people. So what is your, why do you think the people come there and lie? What's happening? Why do the people do that?
Well, I caught myself in a lie just before I even left my building, my home.
Yeah.
Have you been to war before? Yes. Just because I wanted to avoid the awkwardness. You know, if this was me at 23, 24 years old, you know, you would meet a girl in a bar, you know, chat to her. You know, I don't want to marry her, but I would like to do something with her. Yeah. Oh, where have you been in the world? What did you do? Oh, you were in the army. Did you go to war? Yeah, I went to war. I've been to Afghanistan before, or I've been to Iraq. I've told that lie before, okay? Because if they say, were you in the army? Have you been to war? No. Oh, why not? Because I screwed up my whole army career on drugs. So if I just want to sleep with her for the night, wouldn't it be just a little bit easier to tell her what she expects to hear? I don't want to be crude here. I've thought about this for many years, and many soldiers in Ukraine and foreigners have said, for like man code, this is perfectly acceptable to lie to women for this reason, but not to other soldiers. But I have no opinion on that.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I told those lies when I was younger, but the guys who were telling these lies, they weren't all young men. Some of them were in their 30s, some of them were in their 40s, some of them were, I don't know why. A lot of people on the internet seem to have comments about this, because this has been greatly talked about the Ukraine war, interest in foreigners there.
Yeah.
I don't know why they do this. Some people have no military experience. Some people have not great military experience like me. But I knew if I told the truth, that if anything bad happened, it wouldn't be my fault. Do you understand? I didn't want to take responsibility. I told the truth, and I got made onto a team. And to me, I didn't come so far to fail. They liked me. If they like you, they'll have you. If they don't like you, they won't have you.
So how was it? So you got made to a team.
Yeah.
What kind of guys or women did you serve with, and how did it work?
Well, I was very happy because there was one other foreigner. It was the French doctor, Edouard, or Froggy, as I call him. He's a good friend. I was so grateful because he taught me. So I'm an older man than him, but it was almost like he was my role model. He was holding my hand. He had something that I wanted. Do you understand? But now we were going to be on the same team. There was Dima, who spoke Russian, not a word of English, maybe like a few bad words. He was an anesthesiologist. He was an intern from Kharkiv. There was Julia, who was a paramedic, who was 28, and she was the commander. Now, I'd heard, not from her, but from someone else, see, the war in Ukraine's been going on for a long time, that she had to have plastic surgery on her face because in 2017, a mortar round went off as her ambulance was driving and it blew out the window in the passenger side and she was left somewhat disfigured. So this 28-year-old woman in my mind was like a wounded veteran coming back, and that was something to be applauded, something to be respected. And this woman was going to be my commander. And then the driver was her boyfriend. It's Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's Ukraine. It's not NATO. It's not special forces. They didn't tell us anything. They just told us that the Battle of Kiev was coming to the end, and we were going to go to the Zaporizhia front. And I didn't know where that was or what that was. I thought we were going to go into a battle like I don't know what my friends seen in Irpin. I didn't know what they seen in Bucha, the outskirts of Kiev. I thought we were going into war. Not sadly. I'm not going to say disappointed. I was surprised. Our first month was in a hospital. Okay, it was the closest hospital to the Russian lines. Probably about 25 kilometers, and it was in a town, and I'm expecting to go to war, and the town had a supermarket. Okay, the town had a supermarket that you could buy fresh milk, ice cream, chocolate, and, they had a little market. You could get your cigarettes. You could even get by that time, I even found my preferred brand of coffee in Ukraine, the one that I liked. You could buy it all.
It's almost the same as the trenches, right?
I have no war experience, but from all the things I watched, Iraq, Afghanistan, this isn't the life. Yeah. That hospital was the best experience that could have prepared me for anything, before gunfire, before all the things that was going to come later. And what it was, there was, Julia proved to be an ineffective commander. I don't know what her purpose was. But if I'm a gunner, but I'm working in a hospital, that's kind of a useless role, like a security role, like maybe my imagination. Nobody told me what a gunner was supposed to do. So I just pictured that I would be down in the kneeling position, pointing towards where the enemy is. Will they put a cash? This was my imagination, okay? There was no training for this job. The medical training, yes. But what do I do in a hospital? They don't need that. You leave your rifle upstairs in your bedroom. Casualties would come in every day, no less than 20. They'd come in on an ambulance. And what I seen happening right away, nobody was asking me to help. 4 or 5 people would get on the back of the ambulance and they would take the casualty out. The casualty would go into the surgery. They would lift them off, put them on the bed in the surgery. The ambulance crew would take it away, go clean their ambulance. But what had to happen in the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, was called a stabilization. Okay, and I learned more later on in the war. But basically, they would do as much as they could to stabilize that patient, and they could be transferred to Zaporizhia city or to Dnipro. So only so much stuff can happen in 20 minutes. I watched, I observed, and then I wanted to do. And what I found, the first thing I could start with was a pair of scissors. Paramedic, trauma shears, scissors. You would get the casualty and you would bring them in. And the most important thing right away, if there was like a tourniquet around the leg, the bloody trousers would have to be cut. So I've got a glove up. As soon as we see an ambulance come, I got gloves in my pocket. I got to throw them on, and I have to be one of the first people on that stretcher because I don't speak Russian. I don't speak Ukrainian, but I know what they're doing every time after watching it 15, 20 times. Their clothes have got to be cut. Inside their pockets, you have to find their passport, their phone. It has to go into a plastic bag. Documents are so important. Sometimes there would be grenades in their pockets. There might be a radio. All these things had to be taken off them. Somebody has to do that, right? It doesn't sound like glory. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an Azov commando, but somebody has to do this shit. So that's what I was doing. I was cutting up around to the tourniquet to be very careful to cut as clean as I can. So everything that had to happen, it was clearing a pathway for a surgeon and an anesthesiologist to do their work on a casualty. And an anesthesiologist, they will numb, they will administer pain relief, and just like my grandmother used to sew. Like, actually, my grandmother couldn't sew worth a shit. We used to bring it to our neighbor, Mrs. Murphy. That's how he would work with a needle, with things like lidocaine, really fast around the side. And then the surgeon would clean the wound, pour in things like peroxide, so he could actually see what he was working at. That's all my job was, to clear a pathway from clothing, everything. I was doing that every day. But I had Edouard, the French doctor, and I also had Vova, who spoke perfect English. Those were the two that were worth a damn. Julia wasn't. And after every casualty, we would have coffee and cigarettes, and I would ask them like a child, no assumption that I know anything. I never had to be embarrassed about asking stupid questions. What happened there? What happened there? So in real time, I was getting information. Do you ever watch boxing?
Yeah.
You guys like kickboxing here, don't you?
Yeah, also, yeah.
Well, a good referee, you never know they're in the ring, right? They do their job, but they don't get in the way. That's a good referee. I love boxing. So for me, there's a lot of things that has to happen in a surgery, and I'm watching it and I'm learning. How can I be like a fly on the wall, like a referee? I started learning about the medications we were using, drugs that I have no business giving to anyone, but I learned how to draw them up out of a glass ampule. Some of them have to be cut. Some of them can be broken with your thumb. How to draw them. Then you have to mix them, reconstitute them with saline, NaCl. So that's the liquid. But I learned what each drug, so I would prepare syringes because I knew about the casualties, what we were getting every day. And then I asked Edouard, the biggest injury in Ukraine in the army above all is concussion, because the artillery, right? So there was 3 drugs to administer for concussion. Well, I trained on catheters. I made a mess of it in in St. Michael's in Kiev, but I did a couple good ones. And I said, well, what about if I start doing it? I've been preparing them now for a few days. What if I start giving those? What if I run a catheter and I give the 3 drugs and we get 5-6 guys and I could be the one doing that? That would free up the nurses, the doctors, right? And I was proud of myself. I was proud of myself like my dog, like, good boy, look what you did. I was. Yeah. And I was doing that. Eventually, I even got to assistant surgery. You know what a hemostatic clamp is? You know, to clamp into something? I would hold those. I would peel back skin. Because Igor was a doctor. He don't even speak English. He speaks Ukrainian and Russian. But I knew what he was cutting for. But he got so comfortable working with me. It was like an energy, you know? I'm helping with surgery. I'm only holding skin, but I know where he's going to next. I felt pretty good about that stuff. I was fantastic at giving catheters after practice. But then one day, you can blow a vein too. You can make mistakes. Nurses, doctors do all the time. Julia saw that, and she yelled at me. And she said, "You're incompetent." And I wasn't allowed to do catheters anymore. That was a shame. But I worked there for a month, and I learned, and we even had civilians in there. You know, I seen like a 50-year-old woman with half her hand lost. Never bothered me with a soldier, not once. I was surprised that I was cool with amputations, with penetrative trauma in the chest. I was like, wow, Brandon, I never thought, I didn't know what I could do until I did it. Yeah. Some of the civilians are quite hard to deal with. The saddest thing I ever seen in that hospital, if I'm completely honest, it was, he would have been 70, 80 years old. He came in with his wife late one night. He had a stroke. And we had what you call a mass casualty event. And it was a civilian hospital, primarily army now. He was left in the corner with his wife because nobody could help him to piss himself in a wheelchair. And it was a dark little corner. And I looked at him and I cried. I couldn't cry for long because I don't have time. I cried for that man, and but I had to go do my job again. If it hadn't been for the war, he could have got help. Do you know about strokes? I don't know much. I know about trauma medicine, but it gets worse over time. You know, they couldn't help him. That's really sad. His wife, that's his whole world. You know, they're old school. They're not like us now who get divorced like after 4 or 5 years. And, you know, this is just in my head, you know, that was her whole world, her husband there for 30, 40 years. Nobody can help him. Yeah. I went to the front after that, unless you want to know more about the hospital, but that prepared me for things I didn't know.
Yeah, that's...
That was the hardest thing. Out of all that trauma, was that old man in the corner alone.
Yeah, but that catches you on surprise, right? Sometimes the things that hit you, you think firefights or the blood or the limbs and the things that you in advance thinks that is going to hit you. But then it's just that old guy, because that catches the whole image of the sadness of a war, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a different man than I was. I didn't have the hatred for the Russians I do now. But I knew that old man didn't have anything to do with the war. Innocent. Yeah. We went to the front after that.
So tell me, how did it... So tell us, take us there.
Yeah.
Because it didn't end with a hospital like that. You went into the front.
That was only my second month. 13 and a half months. Again, it's all about what I expect. You know, what's coming next. We went, so if we were 25 kilometers from the Russians, we headed south to a village that was 2 to 5 kilometers from their position. But I didn't know how medics work in the front. And basically, we were going to go live in this house, an abandoned house with some soldiers. And what we had to do, we had to park, we had to put up the cam net, park the ambulance. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'm learning as we go. Yeah, that's what you should do. Okay. But what I wasn't prepared for is we wait. You wait and you wait and you wait in this house. And somebody's cooking borscht, doing whatever. We don't have power. We don't have internet. You know, this sucks. It's the modern world. And there's a radio, and you just wait by the radio. But the only difference now, the things I could hear in the distance, I could now feel it for the first time. Artillery. I didn't know what it was at the time, but like a 152 shell. Oh, that's the this, that's that. Oh, that's the big 200. And some of the guys would tell us, either through translation. Now Max and Julia are her boyfriend and her are my only access to the English language now. I'm the only foreigner there. Edouard's not with us, the French doctor. He stayed at the hospital. So did Vova, my friends. But Max would tell me, and I'm feeling the ground shaking. I'm feeling it in my chest, kind of like a roller coaster, but not really. And he's like, oh, that's a kilometer away. Really? It feels closer to me. You know, we probably waited 3 days in there before we get our first call out. And what we did, we didn't do it as well as we could. But we'd get called to a point, a collection point where people get brought back. We didn't know where the collection points are because Julie didn't think it was an important thing to go and identify that. I don't want to turn this into a resentment towards her, but I knew these things weren't right. You know, people were offering to show us where the minefields are, where these things are. You know, good things you might want to know. Maybe on a quiet day, you might even drive back to the hospital and try a different route, you know. I remember the first time we got called out to a point a couple kilometers along the road, not towards the Russians, and a bit down. And there was a crossroads, a dirt road. And there was, I want to say no less than 6 guys lying on the ground. There was probably a platoon strength unit getting ready to get kitted up to walk down that road. And it was our first casualty as an ambulance crew to evacuate back to that same hospital. And I never ask for translations. I just do. If it makes sense, that's what I do. I learned that in the hospital, right? Just get involved. The man we had, he had penetrative trauma in his leg. He had a tourniquet. He seemed okay. He was quite quiet, maybe had a concussion. But what happened, nobody checked his chest. What I learned that day, I teach tactical medicine now too, and I teach this to everybody. If you have what's called a suck-in chest wound, the skin on the body is very elastic. This man had a penetration into his chest. But you have to understand, early in the war, a lot of people weren't medics before the war. There's panic. There's more than one casualty. You have to rip off a man's arm or rip off his shirt. You have to check his back. You have to take your fingers and rake the skin, because that skin can, if it's a small hole, it can swallow over. You'll never see it by looking. And what happened, he looked okay. We took him in the ambulance. I was driving in the front because I'm the gunner, which is kind of a redundant role. They asked me to come in the back to help. And Max is driving. They stop. I get in the back. The roads are very bumpy. At first, my job is to hold on to the side and then to hold Dima, the anesthesiologist, to hold his chest rig, his armor, to try to stabilize him. He's trying to get an IO, interoscular, goes right through the shin bone into the bone marrow when you can't run an IV. They're very expensive too, these IOs, and Ukraine doesn't have a lot of everything at the time. It breaks. We can't get fluids into the man. We can't get drugs into the man. He had a suck-in chest wound. What happens with a suck-in chest wound? Air, tiny bits of air gets inside of the chest. It's called a pneumothorax. A pneumothorax, the air comes in, it puts pressure on the lungs. And this happens over 30, 40 minutes. A guy looks fine, you understand? I've learned this. I teach this to everyone now. That air begins to put pressure on the lung, and then it turns into what's called a tension pneumothorax. The lung puts pressure on the heart. This causes heart failure. And a man that looks fine, that can even talk to you, in 30, 40 minutes, up to an hour, it's life and death for someone who looks fine. You understand? Those medics didn't see that. I had to do chest compressions, CPR. She put a decompression needle that goes in between the ribs, and what that does, that allows air to escape, to relieve the pressure. She punctured his lung. Every compression, I was quite strong at the time, I let my health neglect over the war. They couldn't do it. They didn't have the strength. We drove to the hospital. I don't know. They told me later on it was 8 minutes. 8 minutes I did these compressions on the man. I just did what I was told. And every time I pushed down, blood would come out of the decompression needle in the ribs between his chest bones. And I thought that was pretty weird. I only thought of CPR like Baywatch. You remember Baywatch? It's not like Baywatch. We got him to the hospital. We brought him on the bed. And they got the defibrillator to apply the electrons to him. He died. He died there. For what it's worth, those same doctors I worked with for a month there, they said, good job. But that was the first one that died. That was mine, was ours. I was okay. Everybody was quiet. I was okay because the supermarket, I asked if we could stop for ice cream on the way back. Yeah, we're in war, and I was like, can we make a quick stop and get some things at the supermarket? I'm eating a chocolate ice cream on the way back. The next day was quiet again, and I was pretty sad. But that's the way it went. You'd wait. Some days, 2 days would go by, you get nothing. You get 4 guys. You'd get 3 guys, 2 guys. There was a time we didn't have anyone for 5 days. So I decided to go outside. I had a roll mat. I was still doing my crunches in the morning. I was trying to do some fitness. You can't go far because of the drones. The radios tell you when drones come, you have to stay close to the house or in the house. I had my shirt off. I pulled my trousers down with my boots. I was getting a suntan. You know, oh, isn't this nice? It's getting warmer weather in May. Guys come running to the house. Medic, 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 nahui bliatsuka. A lot of nasty words. We ran out and there's a guy, he's already dead. He's burnt to a crisp. I look at his eyes. I learned when I took my training with Rebecca, when you have a trauma situation, you can't be seen, if it's only one person, you can't be seen not to do nothing. I knew he was dead. Dima knew he was dead. Everyone. But I was taught in the training to try to get those guys away and to kind of like fool around with the body. You understand? And at least try something and then just tell them, sorry, your friend is dead. Yeah, it was a weird place. It was very, very weird. But yeah.
Do you talk about the things that happen with the people you work with? Do you have anybody you're drawn to, or do you share, or is it just ice cream and your eyes you're with yourself? And how do you regulate and how do you cope with the things that are thrown at you?
I've got no one to talk English to. I got to be honest. I would get half a 3G signal on my phone. I would try to learn on YouTube, watch medical videos. Julia spoke and Max spoke pretty decent English. No one else did. But I didn't really click with them. Do you understand?
Yeah, that is clear from your story.
Yeah, I wanted to be better. I asked her once, why won't you teach me more? Well, we're here doing nothing. She was playing Candy Crush on her phone. She said, what do you need to know, Brandon? Well, I'd like to learn more about airways management. I'd like to learn how to detect internal bleeding, because I heard some things, but the courses never went into it that far. She said, but what do you want to know about that? Well, can you help me? You're a paramedic, you know? And I kind of got upset with her. I said, we're doing nothing here. Couldn't you teach me? And she got very angry with me, and she didn't speak to me for about 3 days once. So her boyfriend, by default, can't speak to me either. I got no one to talk to. So what I learned to do, I learned to make a relationship with the animals, because they don't speak Ukrainian either. The dogs, there's a lot of village dogs, you know, they got abandoned. The army takes care of them. And my first dog, I started an Instagram account trying to raise funds to fundraise for our work. And I made a poll on Instagram, and I picked the name I wanted, but they all chose it on my Instagram. I had a small following. I said, what should we call him? Johnny Cash. So my dog, my first war dog, his name was Johnny Cash. And I used to spend time with him under a tree for like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I even tried to teach him how to play. You know, country people, particularly in Ukraine, are a bit hard on their dogs. I don't know if they abuse them, but they definitely don't allow them in the house, and they definitely don't play with them. You know, I put a lot of work into that dog, and the Ukrainians would laugh at me, but I didn't care, because they liked seeing it. You know, they laughed at me, but they were enjoying it too, and I enjoyed it. Towards the end there in the Zaporizhzhia front, we got called out. We got told that we were going to a stabilization point, and I didn't know what that was at the time. A stabilization point is a medical point where it's established in a non-apparent building. It's a hospital for those people who won't live to make it to the hospital. And I was like, well, it's been pretty quiet here for us. Why would we need that? Ukraine was going to launch an offensive, quite a sizable offensive. Don't ask me how many brigades. We were to go to work for 1st Armored Brigade, Pereshetankova. And what happened, we told we'd get a call on the radio when to come. We didn't know when. So that was 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. Went to bed. 3 a.m, our house starts shaking louder than it's ever shaked, more violently. I think for about 6, 7, 8 hours, well into the next day, 10 a.m., Grodd missiles, artillery missiles, maybe even aviation, just boom, boom, boom. It was ours. But it's pretty close to the house too, some of it. So sometimes the outgoing is more scary than the incoming, unless it's coming directly at you, of course. Yeah, we reported to this old schoolhouse. I had a big hall, and I guess we were late for whatever reason. There was guys coming and going. There was ambulances. There was BMPs. There was tanks. You could hear the battle in the distance. Sometimes you could even see aircraft flying overhead. That's not so common in Ukraine. Our aircraft. Guys were coming and going. They were getting thrown down on the ground in stretchers. A bit of a different rhythm, but not that different than the hospital. I didn't much like Julia, and so I knew how to use scissors, and these new guys didn't know me. So I went back to my old job. I got busy with scissors. Come in, come out. Set them down on the ground. Check their wounds. Check their pockets. Get their documents out. The ones that go in to see the surgeons, they had tables laid out. Not beds, just tables. 3 tables. They had teams of surgeons, anesthesiologists, nurses. They would go in, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, same thing as before. Then they would ship them further on. Okay? But then we also had another room off to the side for the dead. And I had a pretty strong back. I brought a lot of bodies in there. I put them in bags. I'd take their clothes. I would take their documents. We ran out of body bags. You ever see a heat blanket? You know, the plastic blankets, the gold, silver ones?
Yeah.
Well, we've got a lot of those in Ukraine. People always send those to us.
Yeah, right.
That's never been a shortage in the war. I think I could start a market for those after the war. But those are pretty good too when you're out of body bags. And you can use electrical tape, duct tape or gaffer tape, whatever country you come. Put them in those, wrap them up. We worked there for 4 days. People would come, people would go. We'd get some sleep. We'd get woken up around 1 a.m, more ambulances coming. Yeah, 1st Armoured Brigade, Pesha Tankova, that's the biggest reason I stayed in Ukraine. The commander, Igor Petrovich, he was an army career surgeon. Lieutenant colonel, probably equivalent of. He'd been in the army for 28 years. He'd served in independent Ukraine in United Nations missions. He'd been to Lebanon. He'd been the commander of a medical commander of Lebanon. He'd been to Yemen. He spoke perfect English. And after a couple of days, as busy as it was, when he got 5 seconds, he said, "You were a foreigner. Where are you from?" The only foreigners they'd ever seen before that was the Azov fighters coming and going, mostly from Finland. I met a few of them at that stabilization. But I was the only one with the medical. I'm from Canada. Canada. Wow. I worked with Canadians. Thank you so much for coming to my country. Give me a hug. Correct me if I'm wrong. You made it pretty far in the army. You were a high-ranking officer, weren't you?
Oh, not really high-ranking. I was a captain.
Okay, but how many soldiers that you met your first time, you give them a hug, welcome?
Well, none probably.
This is a lieutenant colonel giving me a hug.
Yeah, right.
This was not the British Army, no sir. I'll never forget that. I work for him, and what happened, in my opinion, that was my first experience of what I considered war. Now, I never fired a rifle. I didn't storm a trench. It wasn't like a movie, but I had conducted war activities. I had participated in real war. Igor had a problem. Nikolai Nikolaevich had a problem. That's his anesthesiologist. They had a generator, a very old generator, 3.5 kilowatts. Do you understand how power works? That's not a lot of power to be running a stabilization, taking 70 guys a day through it. I thought I was fundraising through my Instagram. Got to be careful what I film because of army casualties, but because of people like my friend Seth here in the Netherlands, for example, these people were supporting me, sending me a little bit of like 20 euros, 50 euros. It was amazing. People from Germany were sending me money just because I was taking films of cats and dogs during the shelling. I was fundraising for a 4-wheel drive. I said to Igor, I said, I don't want to promise you anything, but if I could come back with a generator for you someday, would you like that? Yes, of course. Here's my phone number. To the commander. We left 1st Armored Brigade, and we were going to go back to Kiev. Our battalion does rotations, hospitalers. We support different brigades for 1 month, 2 months. We go home, we rest, we restock, we go again. But not on the same team, thank God.
New team for you, eh?
Yeah. I felt flat. I felt really flat inside that we were going to Kiev, but we were going in the wrong direction. Do you understand? That's where we needed to be. Just fast forward a bit because it's been crazy. I went to Germany after that to get a 4-wheel drive. I fundraised. I asked for people for help on my Instagram. I didn't come back with 1. I came back with 2. I used my credit card to make up for the other one. And then I reverse fundraised. I met people in Germany, people who seen my Instagram, who wanted to help me buy the vehicles, people that were willing to help all over Europe. I didn't know about this until I left my little hole in the Zaporizhzhia front. A man named Enrico formed a group, international aid group, with other people. Yeah, we've been to Ukraine, to Kharkiv 4 times. We want to help you. I went to Stuttgart to meet him, a stranger. He gave me a generator. We went to buy 2 vehicles there, and we made friends we didn't know we had. He gave me 500 euros cash out of an ATM. We got you a hotel room. We want to be friends and we want to help. And it's like me and my friend Des, who was helping me to we got 2 vehicles. They were treating us like rock stars, On the way back, I was thinking, well, I've got about 2,000 euros left on my credit card. What about that generator for Igor? Somewhere in the east of Germany, like at a Bauhaus, I found a diesel. It had to be diesel. It couldn't be benzene. It had to be a diesel generator.
Because they have diesel for the army supplies.
Yeah. It's life and death.
Yeah.
I found a diesel generator, a 7 kilowatt diesel generator for 1,400 euros. And I was like, that's a lot of money. I'm almost out of money, and I'm maxing out my credit card. Something I knew not to do since I was at least 23, 24 years old. I burned 1 credit card when I was young. I wasn't going to do that again, because the problem with the Ukraine war is, what if you live? You're screwed with, you got Russians to deal with. Now you got Visa to deal with. I phoned Igor, and they didn't have much phone signal there, but somehow he answered the phone and it was crackly. Do you remember? Yes. Do you want a diesel generator? I can buy it now. Yes, if you can get it, buy it. We went back to Ukraine. I felt pretty proud of myself. 2 4-wheel drives, Mitsubishi Pajeros. They were 7,100 euros each, both of them. Oddly enough, that was the price they worked out. The 3.2 liter, the 2.5 liter, if you're a car guy. We had both of them. I brought them back to my battalion because that's what people were doing, fundraising for things as individuals. And I felt pretty proud. I gave one to my commanding officer, both of them, they're not mine. They actually gave one of them away right away to some of the Swedes. 2 of the Swedish guys were working with 2 Ukrainians on a team. That really pleased me, like people I know were going to use it. But I asked the battalion deputy commander, I said, can I take this car and go down to the Zaporizhzhia front where I worked before? Can I bring them this generator? He says, yes, that's a good idea. So I'm thinking old army mentality. He's like, no, you have a good idea. Go. I said, okay, well, I'll come back in maybe 5-6 days. Yes, good luck. I was like, well, this is amazing. I just come from Germany. Julia never used to let me go to the supermarket on my own. I'm a 35-year-old man. This 28-year-old girl wouldn't let me go to the supermarket 5 minutes from the hospital. I'm driving all the way from Germany to 5 kilometers from the Russians all by myself. Look at me. I'm all growing up now. Thing was, when I brought that generator there and they needed it, I didn't stay for 5-6 days. I never came back to my battalion till, well, that was June. I never came back till the middle of August. I came back in a hospital.
You started working again.
Yeah. I didn't know what I could and what I couldn't do. They wanted me to stay, and I wanted to stay. They liked me, and I liked them. And what happened, it felt really nice to be needed. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I talked about that before. But when the war calmed down there, because I didn't know this about war, like war can't happen 24 hours a day, or we'd all be dead mathematically. We had a quiet. I stayed there over a month. I even caught corona while I was there. You know what I mean? It really sucked. I didn't know what to do. I started fundraising on Instagram. So as money was coming in, because people seen that I brought the vehicles, now I'm trustworthy. I was getting like $1,000 a week from people, maybe more. I didn't know what to do with it. So I just started making excuses to go to the hospital, whether we had casualties or not. I go to the supermarket, I buy Red Bull. I buy Red Bull, chocolate, I buy milk, like fresh milk. I bring it back down to the front. And the milk went so quick, because I don't think they had milk, and I don't know when. But I felt bad about it. But I'd kind of film secretly with my camera, like giving out this food to soldiers, and people were sending me more money. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is cool. And I felt bad about it, because it was kind of like, I shouldn't be doing this, like filming people. But the more I was filming, like bringing food and things to different soldiers along the line, the more money people were sending me. So that made sense. After a while, it got really quiet there. And as much as I liked it, and they trusted me, and they were teaching me too, they were teaching me new things, there was no war. It got really calm there. In the last 2 weeks I was there, we only had 8 casualties. We only had 8 casualties my last 2 weeks. But there was another war going on in Donbas region. I'd never been to Donbas, but I knew hospitalers, I knew foreigners who were fighting in Donbas, who were medics in Donbas. My commanding officer had no issue with me being on my own with 1st Armored Brigade. She said, "Are you happy?" "Yes." "Are they happy?" "That's perfect." I didn't tell anybody. I just told the commander at 1st Armored Brigade, I need to go help in Donbas. I know somebody in Severodonetsk. And he says, "Well, I wish you wouldn't go." But it wasn't that I was so much of a help. He just didn't want to see me die, you know? I left around the middle of July. I went to Kramatorsk, and I heard the National Guard needed help. There was a Danish boy that said, "Yeah, I can get you a job here." What happened? Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. If you know them on a map, it was very busy in the summer. But what happened? The Ukrainian army just pulled out. They pulled out. They pulled out faster than the Russians could chase them. And when I arrived in Kramatorsk, there was absolutely no fighting for 2 weeks. Up and down the line, 100 kilometers of front. Maybe just a gentlemanly shot of artillery every hour from each side, just to let each other know that they were there. I felt like I missed the war. I showed up. I'm going to work for these guys. They don't need me. All they want to do is sleep, because in my mind, they've been through hell. And there's nothing for me to do. This is the craziest thing I learned in the war. While I'm waiting, looking for work to do, like just giving the commander a drive to town, because I had this Mitsubishi Pajero that was a good truck. What do you need? Do you need anything from the supermarket? Just doing my old tricks, you know? I even had one of the doctors, he had a girl he met on Tinder in Konstantinivka, which was about an hour away. And I said, "So I'm going to take a doctor to get laid." I was like, well, I've got nothing else to do. And if that helps him, helps Ukraine, then that's what I like. I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah, right.
There was no war. All of a sudden one day, this civilian guy comes with a 4-wheel drive, a Suzuki Jimny, and he's got long wild hair. He's got 2 cats crawling all over him, and he's got a shotgun. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? His name was Dimitri. He became one of my best friends. He is to this day, and he was a volunteer with the army, and I didn't understand. I'm a volunteer. I joined a volunteer battalion. I'm not getting paid. There's humanitarian volunteers, like I'm thinking Red Cross, stuff like this.
Right.
Dimitri doesn't want to have nothing to do with that shit. Sorry, but Donbas has volunteers. All of Ukraine has volunteers that volunteer with the army, with a brigade, with a unit, and how all that started. I've learned over the war. They had friends in that brigade. If you're from Odessa, you're going to support 28 Brigade. If you're from Kiev, you're going to know guys in 72 Brigade. They need people to fundraise for their drones. They need people to fundraise for their IFACs, all their supplies. People support who they know. And the guy who knows the guy who knows the guy, then they end up supporting more people. Dimitri just decided he's an IT worker from Kiev. He had many friends in 72 Brigade because Ukraine has a big army culture. He says, I'm going to come to Donbas. I'm going to help them. What am I going to do? I don't know. He rents an apartment in Kramatorsk. He's an IT worker. He makes an American salary, and at nighttime, he does his IT work. In the daytime, he's picking up people's mail from the post office, and he's bringing it to other towns. He's bringing it to other villages. He's bringing it up to second line. Not the first line, but to the second line. He got to know people. You need a package? Get Dimitri to deliver it. What a great service. He didn't want to be part of an organization, but he had 20, 30 people he was helping. I thought that was crazy, because we don't do that in Western countries. No, the army's the army. But if a good idea is a good idea, Dimitri comes up to me one day and I'm bored. He said, do you want to come east of Bakhmut? We're going to go do some sketchy shit. I'm like, okay. Why not? What Dimitri was doing from his friends in 72 Brigade, they were working southeast of Bakhmut. This is all Russian now, by the way, but this is in July, August. He's evacuating civilians. The army knows about them, or there's a Ukrainian organization that might call. Family members of Ukrainians know that there's these hotlines you can call. Can you go get my mother? Can you go get my brother? So can we go to Novolugansk? So I said, where's Novolugansk? Because I can't say these names back then. Novolugansk. I had to look on a map, and the map didn't look good. The map was red. Red is Russian, right?
Right.
Yeah, you follow. But there was this little rectangle by like 500 meters by about a kilometer that wasn't red. And he's like, so we got to go in there. He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. No, we went to Novolugansk. I've been there many times, and you had to drive pretty fast. But then once you got in the town, you were okay. That's when I started getting shot at by mortars. That's when I first seen machine gun fire. I don't know if it was directed to me. You would go to these towns, you would get people, usually old people, sometimes children. Looking back, I only realized later there was Russians in the town. There was men my age, younger. They're dressed like me right now, civilian clothes, but they got boots. The Russians were already in the town, but they were tacitly letting us, I didn't know this at the time, they were letting us take people. And one day, they didn't let us take anybody anymore. We lost the town. And what I seen happen, now the fighting's intensifying there. Now we can only go to the next village, then further west.
Yeah.
We're taking people there. We're getting mortar shots at us. We're seeing flames. We're seeing all these things like fields burning. But I'm recording it. I've got a magazine pouch. I'm recording it on my phone because I'm learning the more things I film, the more money we're getting, right? I want to buy generators again for the army. once I start doing these civilian evacuations, I can film whatever I want. It's not like army casualties. It's immoral to film army casualties and post, like, certainly their faces. It's also illegal in Ukraine. Some people break that law. We're getting a lot of donations and we're getting a lot of people out. And eventually, I was only there 3 weeks or so. We went to Soledar. Soledar is northeast of Bakhmut. Not with Dmitry, but with another guy.
Because are you driving with your own?
I'm driving my own truck.
Yeah.
With a Russian speaker. Okay, because Russian is the language of Donbas. Dmitry had his Jeep. He had to go back to Kiev. See, one thing I learned about the volunteers and even all the army units, never worry about a day off. Because if you're a driver, give it 2-3 weeks, something will happen and your truck will break and you'll have a few days off. That happened to Dmitry, but I still had a good truck. Guy says to me, Philip, do you want to go to Soledar? I said, where's Soledar? I don't know. Apparently nobody could go there. Nobody had gone there. Humanitarian organizations, nothing. But it was me and Philip, and there was a man from New Zealand, and he had a little Skoda, and his name was Andrew Bagshaw, and he was waiting on the edge of town. Andrew since died. Andrew was executed by Wagner, by the way, but he was a scientist. So I'm a volunteer medic with an army unit. Philip is some crazy volunteer with a philosophy degree. And Andrew turned out, he didn't say much, but he was a geneticist, a scientist from New Zealand. And I'm with these weird people. I'm not with commandos. I'm not with Spetsnaz, but we're going into these places to extract people. And what happened over the next 4 or 5 days? And there was a lot of gunfire. I recorded this, so I was getting a lot of funding for it. We would get 50 people a day out of that town between 1-2 vehicles. There'd be a sprinter bus from a church. There was a church group. They would wait outside of Soledar, and we would bring them there. We'd bring them there 2-3 loads. Then they would go. They would go back to Kramatorsk. Then they would come back again. In my Pajero mainly, we were getting about 50 people a day out of that town. But then, one day my luck ran out. With the civilian work, it's not like the army. It's very counterintuitive. What happens, you tend to do the easy work first. I guess the logic is if you only had one vehicle, use your imagination. But we would push further and further east. Philip asked me, do you want to go to Knopf? Now, I'm learning that means nothing to you, but that's East Soledar. Soledar is a mining town, a salt mine. It's very famous for. It became prominent in the war in January. To get there, you have to go across the river, across a bridge. That's Russian Soledar. Now, you know how machine guns work. You know where you would put a machine gun, I assume. The Ukrainian side of the river is very dangerous. Sometimes they shoot, sometimes they don't. I don't know why. Obviously, if you have 2 or 3 vehicles moving, they're going to shoot. But at the bottom, there was a bridge, and the Ukrainians placed anti-tank mines. Big pucks. They're very, very scary. You have to drive around them in an S pattern. But that's called the dead ground, right? The machine guns can't shoot you there, but they know you're there. Basically, we crossed the river, and there was large housing estates, big 5-story buildings. You have to cut into those pretty quick. You get across the bridge and you turn right. Then the mortar was starting because they know where we are. We worked there. It was August 8th. I had to think about it the other day. It was a Saturday. I remember it was a Saturday. Our vehicles, we'd park them. Despite the glass, you'd just take a chance with the tires. We'd park as close as we could to the building. But we couldn't go any further because the roads, there were craters. So we go by foot. And somehow, don't ask me how, but Philip would just get all these calls from these random people. There's people waiting here. There's people waiting there. there was 9 people, our last run, and there was 4 children. I think the oldest was like 14 years old. Take them out, get them back to the big building, get them to the truck. There was 7 people. There was a babushka, there was the 4 children, the husband, the wife. Victor, me, and Philip went, and they had a car, but they said, Brandon, take these people out in your Pajero. And I was very scared, Mark. I was very scared because, you know, those anti-tank mines, you have to drive the S around. Well, before that, on the Ukrainian side, there's a dirt road, and somehow Victor, Ukrainians are very brave, you know, they don't have 2-3 years training like us. But do you know what that training teaches you? It also teaches you what you can't do. Do you understand? They never learned that. A lot of Ukrainians died along the way, but I don't think we would have done as well if we had all the weapons, all the equipment that they had to deal with. Victor effectively made a track on a dirt road. The Russians drop anti-personnel mines, and they can do this through aviation, and they can actually do it through artillery. I didn't know that. They can launch spider mines, leaf mines, and AP mines, and they're pretty good at it. Victor took a chance through there, and he essentially, by luck, made us a tire track that we could follow. I was very scared. They wanted me to take this family out back to the Ukrainian side on my own. I held them there for 20 minutes up against this wall during a mortar attack, and call it cowardly, call it whatever you want. I said to Victor, I said, I'll go with them, but will you go first? Yeah, that's what I said. He got 2 more people. I had 7. We had 9 people. He had an older couple. I followed him out. But stupid Philip, who doesn't know what he doesn't know, he stayed in East Soledar. He found more people that were... See, when the Russians get close, all of a sudden they're willing to go. They're willing to go. They don't want to go, these people, until their neighbor dies or something. And even if their neighbor dies and they call for you to come, maybe the next day is calm. All of a sudden they don't want to leave. But these people wanted to leave. I said, okay. I followed Victor. We got across the bridge through the S pattern. We drove and followed his tire tracks. And then when we got beyond the tree line, it's just a dead drive west out of Soledar. And then you can drive 80, 90 kilometers an hour, 100, probably not the safest thing to do. The police would pull you over here. We don't have any police there. That's nice. But I was scared, you know. I'd seen a lot in Soledar. We had really pushed it. Some days before, we were caught in the crossfire of machine guns. A lot of people wanted to leave then. I was scared that I wouldn't come back again. You know, I'd do runs in and out. I was terrified that, not terrified for me, but terrified that if I would get scared and I couldn't do my job, that I would freeze. I was terrified that when we're taking these people out, stupid Philip is staying. I got to go back for Philip, but what if I don't? Yeah, we got those people out, and Victor and I went again, and he drove in the lead, but I didn't follow my own rules. We got out to the tree line, to where the dirt road starts, to where the Russian machine gun post is over there. You're on the Ukrainian side, and we've got to follow the tire tracks. I didn't give spacing. What I planned to do, I planned to wait at the trees and wait for Victor to go. Not only to give us spacing, so we're not so tempting a target, but to let the dust settle from the dirt road. I didn't wait for that. I just wasn't thinking. I took the corner. My truck hit 2 anti-personnel mines. My windows blew out. My every component in the vehicle was smashed, and I didn't know what happened to me. But 93 Brigade, a lot of people who follow the Ukraine war, they've heard of 93 Brigade. We didn't know it the whole time, but on that dirt road, it was like a quarry. There's hills and there's pits. Up on one of those hills, they had an AT-4 position. They had an anti-tank position. Those boys, I didn't know about it. They sacrificed their position. They came down and they pulled me out of the minefield, and they pulled me up into the pit on top of their hill. I was later evacuated to Kramatorsk, the next day to Dnipro Hospital, and then to Kiev. I spent a month, all in all, in hospital. I've lost most of the hearing in my right ear, and I have a traumatic brain injury. Yeah, I spent a month in hospital. All the while Soledar is still going on. Yeah.
So how was that period for you? Because then suddenly you're forced to sort of slow down and stop, and you cannot go anywhere, and you...
Well, it was a bit much. It was a bit, I wanted to go back to work. I felt a lot of emotion. I felt a lot of restraint. My mind worked the same. Only thing is, what type of phone is that you have over there? Is that an iPhone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't work an Android. I'm a tech retard. But the only way that it makes sense to me, and this is, to this day, this is how my brain works. I've got an iPhone 12. You know when you break your screen on your phone, you got to get it repaired, but you got the old phone in the drawer, maybe an iPhone 6. Yeah. So you're using that for a day. Have you ever done that before? Yeah.
It's pain in the ass.
Yeah. It's the same, but it's not the same. Do you understand? It's slower. That's the way my brain works now. And that was a very hard thing to accept. I've learned to do much better with it. You know, my first week, first 10 days was in Dnipro Hospital, in the barotrauma ward. You know, I would catch myself at times. I would walk funny. I couldn't walk straight. I was always keen to get out and move. I tried to move. I couldn't stay in bed. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking with a slur, you know, like a boxer that had too many fights. And I'd be conscious. And then I'd wonder, is that the way I'm always talking, or is that now? Is that the drugs they have me on, or is that my life? You know, I only ever told one other person this, I think like the fourth day in that hospital, I was feeling kind of good, and I don't like rules, right? I heard there was a supermarket over the road. I had my phone, I looked on Google Maps, sure enough, there's a pizza place, there's sushi, there's all this stuff, and that's like a 10-minute walk away, and this is a busy hospital, nobody's going to notice me. I decided to go for a little day trip. I was 36 years old. I was 36 years old. I made it to the gate, and I'm a 36-year-old man, and I shit myself. And I'm trying to smile right now, because if I'm not laughing, I'm gonna cry. But I look okay in a mirror. I had a lot of cuts, small cuts from what happened. I remember the first night they pulled something out that blew my eardrum. I assume it was glass, and they went pretty deep in for that. They're not telling me. They speak Ukrainian or Russian. It's not natural for them, even with the English-speaking doctor that would come visit, to actually tell me what the fuck is going on with me. And I'm talking funny sometimes, I'm walking funny, and now I shit myself. I'm not trying to be crude, do you understand? But it's pretty lonely. At the same time, I'm a social media hero, because I recorded that on my phone, and I'm not stupid with our fundraising. I've already got enough money to buy about 6 diesel generators. I wanted to buy more diesel generators. That's why I was filming this stuff. And all of a sudden, these Ukrainians are writing me, I'm not from Dnipro, but I've got family in Dnipro, and I can send my auntie to the hospital. She'll bring you food. These are strangers that don't even know me, that are Ukrainians. You know, is there anything we can do for you? There was foreign people. The love people were showing me, because I did something stupid and didn't give the spacing. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, to them, I'm a hero. You know what I mean? Just because I didn't follow my own rules and I drove over mines. You know, I didn't get shot. I didn't get hit by Russian artillery. I drove over the mine myself. Do you understand? I really make a distinction there. That's hard on my head. And, you know, I drove over some Russian mines. But what happened out of that, a lot of people started treating me different. Like a gratitude. Do you understand? They made me feel like I was one of them. Like I was so proud to get wounded for Ukraine. I know that's not the goal of war. You know what Patton said, right? No dumb son of a bitch ever won a war by dying for his country. He was making the other ones die. But, you know, I went back to Kiev. I had to do another 10 days in hospital. I've had MRIs. I have cognitive decline. Okay, I don't know if it's going to stay this way. I don't know what the future holds. But I went back to my battalion headquarters. I didn't tell them that I left 1st Armored Brigade in Zaporizhia. I just kind of snuck away like a little rogue that I thought it was a good idea to go help in Donbas. My battalion commander, I was given the treatment of any soldier medically. I was taken care of so well. And when I got discharged from hospital, I went to our headquarters, almost like I felt I had to apologize. You know, she said to me, she says, never mind that. How do you feel? I said, well, I'm not ready yet, but I feel good. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I'd like to go back to work. She says, okay. What do you need from me? This is my commanding officer, a battalion commander. What do you need from me? You know, my commanding officer is a woman named Yana Zinkovich. She is a woman in a wheelchair. She'd be 30 years old now. She was a medic herself, wounded in Donbas in the old war. She's in a wheelchair. She's also a member of parliament in Ukraine. She's a very powerful woman. And she takes care of the welfare of her people. I know people who've had the best medical treatment. One of my friends lost his hand, one of the medics. He now has one of the best bionic hands in the world. You know, the army gets it, but he probably got better because of Yana, you understand? I returned to Donbas, and she let me continue working in civilian evacuation work. I've worked with the army, with army medical evacuations. I've even, over time, I became a team commander, and I've had some Ukrainians work under me. A 19-year-old girl, Nika. I had a freedom because I was also a social media, what we call a breadwinner. I made money for the army, doing civilian work, getting generators for stabilization points, learning where stabilization points are by working civilian evacuation work from the front. And eventually they gave me Nika, a 19-year-old paramedic, a Ukrainian girl. She's the bravest person I've ever seen in my life. She's 19 years old. She's been shot at. I think her car's even been on fire, not with me. I've seen shrapnel, like actually seen it fly over her head. I've seen it hit a puddle and the heat, you understand, the sizzle. She never flinches. I worked with her for many months. I continued my work. She transferred to another team in Bakhmut. We worked in Bakhmut together in Bakhmut Hospital. She transferred to work on a team with the 2 remaining Swedes that I came over with. 2 went home. And she was with, her name's Nika. She was with Nico, the cool Swede that I joined with. You're a gunner, bro?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I'd seen them about 5-6 days before when she switched teams. I thought it was a great opportunity for her to work with those other people. I was sad to see her go. But she was doing an evacuation one night from Soledar to Bakhmut Hospital. And a BMP, you have to drive with your lights off when you drive into Bakhmut along the river. A Ukrainian BMP came out of the dark, out of a field, and there was a head-on collision, and my friend Nico from Sweden, he was killed, and the casualty in Nico was the paramedic in the back, this brave girl. He was killed too, but Nika, she's not okay, but she was okay. Yeah, she's my best friend. So out of the 5 that came from Sweden, the other one went home. I was the only one left. But that's my war, you know. I've seen people doing civilian work who evacuate civilians, old people, people that are, I'm going to be honest with you, the people who stay in Donbas, and I don't even know if they love Russia or they love Ukraine. They tend to be alcoholics, or they're very old and stubborn, 50, 60, 70 years old. Sometimes they even make their children stay there too. But with the civilian work, a lot of people want to do it. A lot of people don't have military experience. A lot of people are scared to join the army. Hospitallers Battalion does not accept foreigners anymore. So I got in during the Battle of Kiev. You know, I guess when you say when the going was good, it was very bad. But I've seen constantly, and I've worked in this work, I've seen these young, ambitious Germans, I've seen Americans, Ukrainians, who all risk their life every day to try to save civilians. I mentioned to you earlier in Soledar, there was a man named Andrew Bagshaw. He was a genetic scientist. He has published PhD papers, and he was one of the bravest men that ever did this work. And there was a lot of commando types. I suppose there's people listening in your audience here that are some of the finest soldiers. They rose to the highest ranks in their career. We had some of those kind of people come to Soledar. Some of them were great. Some of them, I wasn't so impressed. A lot of those people would look at a man like Andrew Bagshaw, who has no capacity to kill or pull a trigger himself, but he would do a job that they could not or would not do, despite all their war experience, all their medals. I'm not attacking the general soldier community, but I think a man like Andrew Bagshaw, he threatened what they believed they were. He was a little geeky scientist. He'd probably evacuated 500 people himself. On January 6th, him and Christopher Parry, a young boy from England I didn't know, they went to Soledar to get a babushka just before the fall of Soledar, before it began, the final collapse. They were never seen again. The next day, I was asked to go look for them. I'm not going on my own. They went on their own, no Russian speaker, because they've been there so many times before. You know, you feel safe in these places. I went with my friend Dimitri. I asked him if he'd come with me. What do? We don't have intelligence, you know, like a lot of people write comments on the internet. Oh, well, you should have this. We don't have it, okay? The way you do things in Ukraine, do you want to live or die? It's just that simple. Have you got the balls to do it or not? And it's not a bravery thing at all. Like, Nika's got more than me, a 19-year-old girl, but I won't let her go alone. You go 500 meters, you find a position, you talk to the soldiers, you listen. We went to a command post that we knew in Blahadatne outside of Soledar. We talked to Oleg. Oleg was an interesting character in the town. And the command of 46th Brigade, that was the last brigade in Soledar, they said, you're looking for these people, Andrew and Chris. What were they driving? A black Discovery. No, but we can radio ahead, but you should not go into Soledar right now. Something happened last night. What do you mean, what happened? I said, well, the road, East Soledar, the West Soledar, where I got blown up in the minefield in August, maybe a month later, the Russians took that. So from September till January, they'd only move 4 kilometers, okay? To this one road we had them held, east and west. That's us. Overnight, the day that Andrew and Chris went missing, they pulled a pivot movement. They took the north side too. They've got us surrounded by 2.5 sides now. We went into Soledar. They radioed in the last command post that we were to go there, and they asked us, would you please bring all these cigarettes They probably gave us about 10 cartons of cigarettes. What's that? 100 packs of cigarettes to bring to the command post. I guess you ever hear the saying, smoke them if you got them? We went there. There was a commander there, maybe a company commander, spoke perfect English. He had a place for us to park under a garage. Drones are a problem. And there was him, a drone commander. There was a couple of soldiers. We went down into the root cellar and they flew their drone because they were flying drones. Couldn't find the Discovery. And they said, it's not possible for you to go where those people are. That is now Russian. About 200-300 meters from us. But buildings make a difference. It's really nice to have buildings in the way. Yeah, they went to get this old woman. And they were never seen again. 46th Brigade got that woman in the morning in an armored vehicle during a firefight. We didn't go quite that far. That was about another 150 meters away. We left that town. We got this woman. And I asked Dimitri to ask her when we left the town. I said, you've had 8 months to leave this town. She was about 60, 70 years old, and I know she doesn't speak my language, but I tried to be nice about it. I said, you've had 7-8 months to leave. Thousands of people have left your town. There was 2 boys that came to get you yesterday, 2 British boys. They're probably dead now. Why do you stay as long as you stay here? Dimitri told her what I had to say, and this is what she said, and he translated to me. She said, I had 3 children before the war. My husband died some years ago. My oldest son joined the army. He joined the Ukrainian army and he died in Bakhmut. Soledar, just down the road. My son died in Bakhmut. My daughter married a soldier from Western Ukraine and she's moved there. She told a story. She's moved to West Ukraine. She has a couple dogs. She's got no children there, but she had one more son. And sometime in August, he left the house at night to go get water, but he never came back. She's lost one son. Her daughter's gone away. She couldn't leave Soledar. She held on to the bitter, bitter end for hopes that her son would come back. Her son that went to get water that never came back. And Andrew and Chris disappeared. Over the next 5-6 days, I was in and out of Soledar till I was the last person in my battalion out of Soledar. What took them 4 months to advance 4 kilometers, they took 5 kilometers between the 7th of January and the 13th of January. The last time I left that town was the closest gunfight I've ever seen. But later on, it was determined that, at least with Andrew, it was a big thing in the news. I kept my mouth shut about it, but people talk. People like to be in the news, like to say that, oh, that was my best friend, whether they knew them or not. When the news cycle was over, the bodies were sold back by Wagner. I don't ask me the details, but we got their bodies back. Wagner will sell you. Oh, they'll sell you your son's body. Don't ask me how it's done. How we do prisoner exchanges. Andrew was shot in the back of the head by a 5.45. So whatever happened to them, maybe he died on his knees, from the top out the front. I never did civilian work ever again after that. I stayed in Ukraine for another. That was January. I left on April 19th. I was done with civilian work. I didn't have the stomach for it no more.
Wow.
Sorry for the depression, taking the air out of the room.
Yeah, well, I only appreciate, and that's why I just let you tell the story, because I think it needs to be told, and I hope people are still listening and they're still with us.
Well, you can edit it to whatever you want.
No, I never edited anything, man. So what you hear is what you get. So
he never had a gun. He never held a gun in his life. He was a humanitarian worker, both of them.
And he was executed.
Shot in the back. I can't say about Chris's body. My friend Philip identified their bodies in the Kiev morgue. There was a bullet in the back of his head. The only reason I'm telling you that now, because that wasn't public information, that is now public information. But the news doesn't report about it because news has a cycle, do you understand? That's old news.
Yeah.
Why is Sky going to talk about that now? But that's the truth. He was shot in the back of the head. And all those people who said, oh, you shouldn't be here, you don't have army experience. Look at him. If he got 500 people out before he died, what kind of kill count is that in combat, in army terms? He was Audie Murphy. Audie Murphy was the most decorated soldier in the U.S. Army in World War II. That's the, if you want to, it's not comparable, but he was up there. Vasily Zaitsev, you know what I mean? The legendary sniper. That's what Andrew Bagshaw was in those terms. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's honor him.
Yeah.
And like the heroes come in all shapes and sizes, like the 90-year-old girls, and it doesn't matter. It's the people who do the work and get in there. And
there's plenty of badasses too, you know. There's plenty of guys I know, like a former U.S. Marine that I have the utmost respect for, and he serves for the right reasons. You know, he's not there for him. Well, he did get divorced right before the war. That's a commonality I've found a lot.
Yeah.
But he's a good man. You know, there's a lot of guys like that too. You know.
Yeah, and I know it's difficult for you. You would never say that, but you're among that list as well, mate. I mean, you're doing it, and I don't know if it's my place to say it, but I'll say it anyway. I mean, it is appreciated what you're doing, and it is worth it. It is worth your time, and you've taken all those people out as well, man.
It continues. Every day. There's people that do more.
Yeah, I know, but
just because I'm here now, that's still going on.
I know, Brandon.
All day long.
It's also sometimes you can also just take a minute and appreciate it for yourself, and just allow me to thank you for your work. And
thank you.
It's not just other people, man. You're doing it as well.
Well, there had to be a solution to all this. Do you understand? You know, so many people have helped us. Good people here in the Netherlands as well. I know a man here that makes IFACs out of his own money, doesn't collect donations. And tourniquets are really good, you know. That's probably as simple as that is, that's the most important medical, because if I don't stop the bleed, I can't get you to a doctor.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, mate. Well, because you're now here. Mm-hmm. You're sitting here in a chair. You got out for a while. Maybe you're going back.
Yeah, next month.
What can we do? All the people, I know a lot of people are listening, are willing to do. I know a lot of things happened in Signal groups and all kinds of groups I was in as well. Some people go there. I know people. I talk to people who go there regularly and bring stuff over there. So tell us, how can we help you?
Okay. Well, first of all, if you want to help me, thank you very much. If you don't want to help me, I could suggest other ways to find people to help. I have seen what I keep calling a proof of work. I buy generators, I buy Motorola radios, things on the consumer market. I buy Starlinks. I buy EcoFlow power stations. I've only learned along the war what the army really wants. I spend all my money that I raise on army medical, and now on offensive capabilities, night vision, thermal scopes. If you don't want to support that, if anybody has an Instagram account, I have a YouTube that's quite successful. You know, that's where most of my money comes from. People say, well, I'm not on Instagram. Well, then fuck off. But I just tell people, if you want to know, YouTube takes me many hours of the week to make a video just recording my work, whether it's on a med point, whatever. But almost all independent volunteers in Ukraine, whether it's medical, whether they're doing drones, whether they're doing anything, they could be foreign, they could be Ukrainian, they all have an Instagram account. That's where we all met. That's how I've met my contacts in Germany, Netherlands, England. My radios are bought in England. He flies them over, Ryanair, pays 500 euros baggage, but he has a van. There's people doing these things, you know? And my advice would be, if you didn't want to support me, find the volunteers on Instagram. Hell, follow my Instagram. You'll see who they are. Watch their work. Just watch. Don't give them any money. Maybe, if you want to right away. See one that you like. There's 20, there's 50, there's 100, and they're doing amazing things. If you want to support me, I hope you have the stomach, because some people don't. I only work with the army now. I've worked in Avdiivka direction, 36 Brigade, 53 Brigade. I met a very influential man, and what he does, he stabilizes the pocket. Not him, but his team. They hold the line. They're called 116 Territorial, but they're not a normal territorial defense unit. Krasnahora, they held what's called the pocket for 2 weeks, just their unit. They move around fast, and they asked me for a place to live in my house once. Please, sir, can we stay here in between our missions? We're tired. That man, Maxim, was a plumber, a very successful plumber in Poltava. He joined on February 24th, left his wife, left his daughter, and he survived in Sumy region the first couple months, and then he went on training for many months. He bought a thermal scope with his own money. He has a PKM machine gun, and he spent $6,000 on a thermal scope for his machine gun. He said to me, having a thermal scope is like playing Grand Theft Auto on cheap mode. He taught me many things, this man. He's one of my better friends. One night, Russia, we lived in a village. The aviation dropped a bomb on our house. They killed our cats, but everybody lived. And I was, for what it's worth, I was the hero medic for the night. A couple guys got it pretty rough, but those were his boys. That's the point. I don't want to buy tourniquets anymore. I'll buy them. I raise a lot of money, $20,000, $30,000 every month. So if you want to give to another volunteer, they need it too. I'm very blessed. I buy night vision. I buy PSV 14 monoculars. I don't want that fancy super special forces underwater knife fighter stuff that's $10,000, $15,000. I want a cheap one, 2,000 euros, 2,500 euros. We can drive with that, you know. They say you shouldn't, but I drive with it and I can buy more. I bought 3 night vision my first time. We have an M113. They come from here in the Netherlands, I believe, a lot of them. America obviously sends the most. You guys sent a lot of the ambulance converts to us. The first night I ran them out to Karamik, to our highway position. The driver had them and loved it. He got 3 guys out, and the 50 cal gunner loved it too. He killed 3 Russians. That's 5,000 euros for 2 PSV 14s with head mounts, and we killed 3 Russians, we saved 3 Ukrainians. First night, we're up 6. Yeah, it's pretty sick stuff, you know. I also buy thermal scopes now. Marksman. Now, Ukrainian boys, they've got big egos and they've got big hearts, so don't hurt their feelings. They call themselves snipers. They're not snipers, they're marksmen. They have an AR-10 rifle if they're lucky. They have a Dragunov, an SVD. They like 35 millimeter scopes. Okay, you could get a 50 mil for a machine gun, maybe even bigger. I didn't know about this stuff until I had to learn. Do you understand?
Right. Yeah.
I've bought those for those guys, but you got to be careful. You can't just give it to anybody, because everybody in Ukraine says, "I know." Well, I say, show me. Let's see you zero that now. You got 15 minutes. Here's the new one. I go to certain units that I've worked with, that I know them. I work their med points. I work for 36 Brigade for 2 months. I know what's right, what's not right. What I want to do now, and I've pretty much achieved my goal. I always keep achieving my goals. I want to buy 19 and 25 millimeter thermal scopes. I actually buy them here in the Netherlands. My sales rep is named Svetlana here at MSS Defense. I don't know if I can say their name. She's from Irpin. She's very supportive and helpful with us. Okay. I buy 19 and 25 mil thermal scopes for AKs because nobody's ever done that before. Everybody wants to give to SSO. They want to give to Kraken. They want to give to all the fancy units. But everything that happens in that war happens at night. And all those fancy units, and there's some very good ones, all their operations more or less depend on a stable line. I know from working for 28th Brigade in Klishkivka direction, southeast of Bakhmut, most of their companies only lose ground when they run out of ammo. That's the only reason. So, there's some boys in the Ukrainian army don't even have the rifle sighted, iron sight, especially with the new conscripts. It's pretty hard to hit something, isn't it? I'm buying those scopes for a company, about 30 for a company, but that might not sound like a lot for a rich country, but a lot of them a rifleman's never seen it before. Imagine how accurate their fire would be. Our engagements in the trenches, I can tell you, I work on second line. I don't need to be on first line trench to tell you what's happening. Those engagements are no more than 200 meters in the dark. And the Russians only go for their guys to pull out their wounded if they have night vision, if they have thermals themselves. So they go back for their assets, not their men. What does that tell you? These thermal scopes I'm looking at, I don't want a $10,000 thermal scope. I want a €900 one, a €1,200 one. I want this to be in the trenches with the companies I trust. I want to help to show them. I'm learning more every day about thermals. And then I hope that maybe somebody might say, like Joe Biden, how many thermals can we buy for one HIMAR? I'm telling you, everything in that war happens at night. Night vision's to get to work, thermals are to go to work. That's what I fundraise for. That's what I do. If you want to help with that, don't even give me any money. Watch my YouTube. I'm a little bit eccentric. I'm a little bit different, but I've done all right, if I can say so. I'm going to smash this current goal for 30. I'm already sitting on 25. I'm not going to stop. As long as nothing happens to me, support me next month after. On my Instagram, there's plenty of good volunteers to follow. But don't waste your money with the Red Cross. Don't waste your money. The only good big one I've seen, I'm just being honest, Médecins Sans Frontières. They don't go to the front, but what they do from 20 kilometers back, I know people who work for, they take care of those wounded people for 6 months. We could never do that. Great NGO. But I support volunteers.
Yeah.
Support.
Oh, I think it's...
That's my passion.
Yeah.
I'm tired of buying tourniquets.
I think it's good advice. And that's why we need the intel from you, from the ground, to hear what's helping. And when people want to help, they know now how to approach that. And
it's all through social media.
Yeah.
But you'll find a volunteer that will gel with you. I'm not. Yeah, support me if you want, but
yeah. Well, thanks, Brandon, for your story and your work. I appreciate it a lot. Can I give you a hand?
Thanks, brother.
Your small hand.
Yeah, you don't forget a thing. Okay, you don't forget anything. I'm not sure how long it's been here. I'm sorry if I've taken too much of your time.
No, there's never enough time.
Yeah, but I'm very grateful. It's very humbling. I'm a high school dropout. I never achieved in my army career, but we're just trying to work together to do one common cause now.
Yeah.
It's funny how life turns out. Thank you.
Well, just keep safe, keep your spirits up, keep your ass down, and do the work, man.
Thank you.
Keep safe.
Thanks, Mark.
And take care of yourself as well, mate.
I'll try.
Yeah.
I'll try. Yeah, I've been treated pretty good since I've been in your country here, but it's only been one day.
Yeah.
And the English say you guys are pretty tight with money, but I've been treated pretty good since I've been here.
Oh, that's good. I think, you've been brought here by Seth behind the scenes, and you're in good hands. So, tomorrow you're leaving again.
I go to Canada. I have some speaking things to do. I want to visit my family, and I'm going to Texas for a shooting course, so I can teach. As simple as that is, little things people are helping me with. Where better to improve my shooting and my thermal skills than America and Texas?
Yeah.
And then I've got a TAC med course before I go back to Ukraine. So it's been busy.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's just like how so many people like yourself have been willing to help me. I've done this in Estonia, Denmark, England, Finland, Sweden, now Canada and USA, and then I'll go back to Ukraine. Go for I want to say another year, but I'll just do the best I can. I'll go for as long as I can. I don't know anybody other than that, but I'm just going to try the best I can.
Well, good luck, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here and telling your story. Thanks for everybody listening, and I hope you will find and follow the advice how to help. So, stay tuned and take care, mate.
Until next time.
Hope to see you again. Right, Scherpschutters uit. Thanks, mate.